Welcome to Deleted Saves. On this episode, Thief, the Dark Project on PC. What really is stealth? Video games, in the last decade especially, have been fascinated by the concept of sneaking around enemies, skittering through the dark, and causing one-button prompted automatic kills, even if the protagonist has never done this before. But is that truly stealth? What if there was a game based solely around that concept, and that killing was not the focus? Let's explore that with 1998's Thief, the Dark Project. As the old saying goes, discretion is the better part of valor, and sometimes it is better when dealing with dangerous situations and uneven odds to try and sneak your way out of trouble, most commonly in games. If you're having to do this routinely in real life, then I am genuinely worried about you. But most of gaming's history has been confrontation heavy, wading into combat with fists, blades, firearms, and what have you to keep action high and progress ever forward. And gaming in the 1990s was all about that confrontation gameplay, especially with the release of so many iconic FPS games during the decade, such as Doom, Quake, and Wolfenstein 3D. Thief was born to be the antithesis of these games and genre, while still utilizing the first-person perspective, and was quickly named a, quote, first-person sneaker, unquote. The use of sound and light levels were critical to the design of Thief, being one of the first to concentrate on these as actual game mechanics, and advanced for the time artificial intelligence controlling NPC movements helped to build that sense of emergent gameplay, as the popular term says, to give a sense of non-horror-based tension that enemies could turn up at any time, or suddenly double back to investigate when you thought they'd passed by. And that sense of tension and having to retreat and think on your feet is necessary, as Thief is specifically non-confrontational in nature. You play as Garrett, a master thief plying his illegal trade in the city, a dark fantasy / pre-industrial revolution place where gas lamps light the corners but people still fear witchcraft and worship uncaring gods. Garrett is an orphan, raised and trained by a secret society who is so secret that pretty much no one can even see them as they walk among the citizens, which is how Garrett comes to their attention. He sees one and tries to pickpocket him. Impressed, this person, who is known as a keeper, takes the boy on. Garrett, however, later leaves to pursue a life of crime. However, Garrett would rather be an independent thief, but is pressured by a crime boss named Ramirez to join his organization. Despite being armed with a sword and a bow, Garrett is not a killer. His bow is used more as a tool, with an array of grappling arrows, water arrows to douse torches, magical moss arrows to make soft spots to step on metal floors, and more. His sword is little more than for show, meaning that if he is discovered, Garrett is sure to lose a sword fight against even the lowliest guard. His main weapon of defense is a blackjack, which is strong enough to knock out guards with even the sturdiest of helmets, provided it is done from total concealment. But not really the undead or magical beings, as we'll see in later levels. In any case, Garrett decides to stop paying extortion fees to Ramirez, and instead robs his mansion, in daring fashion. And this robbery gets the attention of a woman named Victoria, who hires Garrett to steal a special sword from an eccentric weirdo recently moved to the city, who's named Constantine. And when he does, it is revealed that Constantine was the one who hired Garrett through Victoria to steal from him as a test, and that he would like Garrett to steal a magical object known as the Eye, which is hidden deep within the main temple of the Hammerites, the very technology-heavy clerics of a god known as the Builder, and who believe in progress and righteousness, which makes them the obvious bad guys in a dark fantasy world. The Keepers, the Hammerites, and the Pagans are the three factions that vie and make war for the city, and Garrett cares for none of this, only being interested in getting rich quickly. Believe me, this is a much deeper backstory than I'm sketching out here. Once Garrett gets the location of the Eye, the artifact itself psychically intrudes on Garrett, telling him there is a nearby Keeper Temple where the Eye's power can be unsealed. The Keeper Temple was sealed to prevent the city's destruction by the Trickster. Again, a lot of the titles here. Holy shit. And it leads Garrett to steal the talismans that can unseal it. Once he does, sneaking past all sorts of non-human guards and trapped levels, Garrett returns to the powered-up Eye to Constantine, who reveals himself to be a god named the Trickster, and Victoria, his acolyte, who trap Garrett and rip out his flesh and blood eye so it can be used as the truer power basis for how the magical eye will work, and they leave our protagonist for dead. Before he can fade away, two keepers recover Garrett and help him flee, and along the way it is revealed that the trickster wants the world to return to a wild state. That may not sound too bad, but the truth is Garrett and everyone in the city has come to rely on the mechanized nature of it to keep them safe from the wild lands outside that teem with deadly fairy creatures and powerful wild beasts or wandering undead. Once out of danger, Garrett seeks help from the Hammerites, who he has so far spent ridiculing and has stolen from, to fight back against this divine foe. But the Hammerites are all but wiped out by the pagans and their forces, but not before they were able to craft a fake eye that has been trapped. Garrett must then take this booby-trap device and sneak into the heart of the trickster's compound and swap them out, hoping to stop this dire fate for the city. The swap works, and the trickster is destroyed. Later, Garrett gains a new mechanical eye, and the game sequel baits, saying that there is a coming Metal Age. Luckily, that sequel did come out. Thief's story, at its heart, is reminiscent of an early Tarantino film style, where no one is trustworthy, not even our protagonist, but everyone has to try and rely on each other, only to get double and triple crossed in the end. Area maps are not very big, but they are loaded with secrets to discover, with lots of treasure used to buy new gear between missions, notes that are filled with world lore, and additional gear that holds over between missions. Those maps also focus on the vertical rather than the horizontal, meaning Garrett must climb more often than not to reach new heights, and mansions or dungeons are multi-storied. As stated earlier, light and sound play a huge part in the game's experience, so the player has to constantly judge levels of light to see if enemies will notice you, which they can do very easily, and what types of floor Garrett is standing or walking across. Carpets and grass make a lot less sound than stone and metal plating, and any errant sound will draw guards. Light not so much, but guards may complain if torches go out, or be more prone to patrol an area if the lights get dim. And above all, don't be seen and don't get caught, because Garrett has all the durability of a wet paper bag and can only take a few hits before dying. Maps can also be tackled in any fashion and order, relying on the choices and cleverness of the player to assail the target and retrieve what you came for. Looking Glass Studios, the developer behind the game, and Thief's original designer and writer Ken Levine, the man behind BioShock and System Shock, had planned the game to be a darkened version of the Arthurian legend. But after some significant changes to both the studio itself, the lead writer after Levine left, and to the main plot, Thief became a game about stealth and thievery over combat, and dropped the direction correlation to medieval legends, instead using some of those trappings in a clockpunk fantasy background. The game was also designed to be full of unscripted events, so the player would have to improvise on the spot and guess their level of safety when enemies are nearby based on light levels and sound to make enemies, as well as other environmental clues, part of the problem and solution. Nothing like this had been done before at the time, and the project nearly collapsed when the proofs of concept in the programming had routine hiccups with the artificial intelligence. But in the end, the team was able to get it fixed and produced a stellar game. Critics loved this game when it came out, with heaps of 9 out of 10 scores, and it even still holds a 92 on Metacritic over 20 years later. I have to agree with this consensus, an uncommon statement from me, I know. Graphics are severely dated, and most of the enemies do look like badly arranged paper dolls, but you don't play a game like this for the graphics. You play it to truly feel like a master thief, walking the line between life and death, freedom and incarceration, having to rely on your own senses just to score a few more baubles. True, a lot of what Garrett has been trained to do is useless against the non-human enemies of the late game, but by the time you encounter them, you're pretty well versed in how to get around mortal guards and foes, so you can use those same things you learned there and use them to your advantage against these less than mortal foes. It is not that hard to move techniques from one enemy type to another. Many reviews ago, when I talked about Dishonored, I mentioned Thief along with Metal Gear Solid and Tenchu Stealth Assassins, as being the three pillars of stealth action gameplay. I have not wavered or changed my opinion in this. Without Thief, there would be no Dishonored. There would be no Assassin's Creed or Hitman as we know them. If you ever wondered why a modern game needed to have a stealth section, or been annoyed at how shitty and shoddily they were executed, it was because someone on the team was trying to recreate what Thief did decades ago, or missed the point of it. I understand. Thief is a tough act to follow. Even after all these years of games later, I still can't quite find anything that equals the stealth skills shown by this game. And even now and then, I need to boot this game up just to re-experience the magic of it, even if I don't complete it. I guess it left quite an impression on me in a way, now that I think about it. I know that Garrett lives on in my head as the archetype of the thief character. Disconnected, somewhat greedy, self-centered, and certainly not a hero, but someone who will do the right thing if necessary. And not without a lot of complaining about it at that. Thief, the Dark Project, so defines what stealth action is, there is just no real comparison to any modern title. Thankfully, it can easily be found on modern PC game sites for digital download. If you love stealth games and have not played this one, you owe it to yourself to get a copy of this legendary title just to experience it, even for just a few levels. I guarantee you'll be hooked before you know it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to sneak off before the Hammerites realize I've been here. We'll see them again soon. Just you wait. Thank you for listening. Deleted Saves would like to thank Brad for being a patron of the show. If you would like to become a patron of the show, please go to patreon.com and check out Deleted Saves podcast. All donations go directly towards maintaining the show itself. Thank you.